Sponsored by The Way to My Heart Incorporated.
Welcome to the Heart of Innovation. 60 minutes that could save life and limb with new breakthrough ideas and innovation changing the healthcare landscape. Brought to you by patient advocacy group thewaytomyheart.org in partnership with Abbott. Here are your hosts for the Heart of Innovation, Emmy Award-winning journalist and founder of The Way to My Heart, Kim McNicholas, and interventional cardiologist and founder of the Save My Piggies Health Education Series, Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm actually live at the OEIS show in Las Vegas, Nevada. I've been here for a few days. OEIS is the Outpatient Endovascular and Interventional Society, and this is their 11th annual event. It's their scientific meetings where doctors gather to learn what's new and what's next in treating any sort of arterial or venous issue, particularly peripheral artery disease, which is those blocked arteries and mainly the leg arteries. So many discussions happening around the crackdown on reimbursement for some of the procedures to open up the arteries, in insurance company backlash. I mean, there's just so much, I think, John, that we have to discuss. These are the office-based labs. So you have the hospitals, and then you have the office-based labs, the clinics, that still can open up arteries in their own little office space versus in a hospital. That's who we're talking to. That's who I'm surrounding myself with this week in Las Vegas. So lots going on. I have a booth for the first time. So I'm kind of excited. OEIS actually announced that they are endorsing our free walking program. It's a text-based walking program that democratizes access to walking support. Walking is the best medicine for patients with P.A.D. because you can grow natural bypasses with every step you take. And so we are offering the program to all of the doctors for free. And this SVS, the Society for Vascular Surgery Foundation, actually came in and they donated 2,000 step count watches, fitness watches, to give to the doctors, to give to their patients in need, for everybody who signs up for the program. So really excited about that. Had about 20 doctors that have come over to the booth in the last day or so to sign up. So it's been pretty busy.
It definitely, well, number one, hello, Kim. How are you? I'm super stoked that you're out in Vegas. That's an interesting meeting of the minds, I imagine, because like you said, there's a lot to talk about. I do not have an outpatient lab. I work in a hospital. All my cases and procedures are done in the hospital, but we definitely know that the outpatient labs, whether right or wrong, are under the microscope for a number of reasons.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to kind of discuss. I'd love to hear kind of what you're hearing. I can pour my 2 cents in, and literally it's 2 cents because I don't have one, but I've heard, you hear things, and you often have to ask yourself what percentage of that what you're hearing is truth and what isn't, and third hand comments and stuff. So it's pretty interesting. And then I'd like to also at some point too today share a really heartbreaking story of a patient that I saw for the first time and as a second opinion, because it just breaks your
I actually would
heart.
love to kick off with that, because I think it's a great way to remind everyone that this is about the patients, that there are patients that are out there suffering. And we got even a note as we were just starting the show from Douglas, a patient who's watching right now. And he says his patients were the ones stuck in the middle between all of this insanity, between everyone out there and all the animosity that's happening between the hospitals and these office-based labs. And everyone's fighting over these patients. But it's really taking away and at the expense of the patients, and they're suffering in the meantime. So I really would love to kick off the show with your story, to just bring everyone back to reality and what this is all about.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? My video
Yep.
internet seems a little bit unstable, so I'm good. Okay. And
You're
Kim,
good. You
give me
might want to just turn off the video for a moment and
yeah, let's just
have your
do
audio.
that. So so just audio now. I saw a patient in our acute kind of urgent limb center above the cath labs on Thursday it was, as a second opinion. So this gentleman was in a nursing facility. He's in his late 50s, and he's in a nursing facility because he was having issues walking and rehabbing after a recent hospital discharge. So the nurse practitioner that works in this facility used to work for us, and so she saw his legs and said, "You probably need to get evaluated by my team or former team." So I came in and I was called to see the patient after my other nurse practitioner saw him, and his wife was with him as well. So I have never encountered this before, but his legs were so ischemic, and he's African American. And the only reason I mention that is because we've obviously been doing a lot and I've been kind of riding your coattails, but you've been doing a lot with the African American population. And we had that at one point during the seminar that we had. It was kind of the African American foot, right? So their skin color's darker. It's sometimes more difficult to assess lack of blood flow because, I'm white as a ghost, and if my hand goes white, you would know. But it's harder for African Americans. So anyway, when I looked at his legs from the knees down, both of them were basically dead. So now this gentleman, I knew in my head that I ultimately was going to be admitting him to our hospital for bilateral, so both right and left amputations above the knee. This gentleman walked into a hospital in March, I believe, and now he will be leaving our hospital with no legs. In fact, we later found out that he was becoming septic from this because he couldn't feel them. And it broke my heart on a number of levels. First of all, because all the work that you're trying to do, but yet we still missed out on this guy. And he's so young that he's young. Hopefully he can, get the bilateral prosthesis that he needs and walk again. But he took it like a champ, to be honest with you, because I think he kind of knew deep down that this was coming. But man, and the sad thing too was his wife said, I feel like if we would have gotten to maybe somebody different, this would be a different outcome. And I said, you're right, it might have been. I don't know. But
Exactly.
I was almost, not that I was crying, but I was just like, my heart was crying. Seriously, I was so ticked off.
Oh, I can absolutely imagine. I mean, God, how devastating. I want to have a grander conversation about this. So I think we should just head to break now, and then let's come back and revisit this conversation because it's a good way to start off, and it's a good reminder, for people to always get a second opinion, and the fact that they have to really stay on top of this. So stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation, 860 AM. The Answer. Don't go away.
Leg health.
Fit Old Dog's aging training tip number 1 is never give up. In 2010, I self-diagnosed an aortic aneurysm, and Joe Fulton fitted me with an AA stent graft. I needed to modify my Ironman training to protect that stent, which I did by reducing hip flexion on the bike and avoiding use of the rowing machine. Fortunately, in 2011, I finished the Lake Placid Ironman with that stent graft. However, it was displaced in 2013 in a bike wreck, and Tara Mastracci of the Cleveland Clinic repaired it. I was very lucky in that respect. However, it wasn't over yet. In 2014, I developed calf pain in marathons, and then real problems began. What a pain. However, no pulse could be detected in my right foot. In 2015, I had an ABI test in Mark Farber's facility, and he confirmed I had P.A.D. However, in 2013, with P.A.D., I managed to be third in my age group in the World Half Ironman Championships in Finland, using Fit Old Dog's training wheel, which begins with the study of awareness. Tip number 1, never give up. You never know what you can do if you try.
This is 860
This is a good
AM.
discussion.
The Answer.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm live at OEIS. It is a conference in Las Vegas. It is the Outpatient Endovascular and Interventional Society Conference. It's their scientific meeting, the 11th annual, and it's where physicians who run office-based centers, you have your hospitals and you have your office-based centers, where they open up the arteries for a disease called peripheral artery disease. If you've tuned in to a lot of our episodes before, you understand that peripheral artery disease are those blockages that are mainly in the leg arteries, and left untreated, you could end up with a heart attack, stroke, or amputation. And amputation is what we were talking about with Dr. Phillips, my wonderful co-host, who had a real heart-wrenching experience just this past week for the very first time, having to tell a patient that he needed bilateral AKAs. And that's the short term. That means both legs above the knee amputations. And John, I want to just bring to people's attention, just first off, that how devastating it is for you as a doctor having to tell a patient. And the fact that you were saying before the break that your heart was in tears.
Well, I mean, so we typically have a moment of inspiration. I don't need a quote today for that. I will just take the inspiration from this gentleman and his family, wife, because if someone told me that, number one, he's coming to see us for potentially a Hail Mary, and maybe he knew that and wrapped his head around it. But if someone said to me, hey, you need to go into the hospital right now and get both of your legs amputated, I don't know how I would, keep it together, let alone my wife. But they were both very stoic individuals. And they were also, very kind of, they understood what was at stake here.
Yeah.
So then you have
Just getting a lot of feedback here. Okay, that's better. So yeah, I mean, it was just, I'm fumbling and stuttering here because I was just so frustrated, and thinking about it again got me even more frustrated, because at some point in this gentleman's care, we could have saved at least one leg and not him losing two. But it also just speaks to the fact that there's so many areas of failure in this gentleman's care. It's we talk about failures in the Swiss cheese model, where like all the holes kind of line up in the block of Swiss cheese and you can look from end to end. And that's when something catastrophic usually happens. Well, that's what happened here. The fact that he goes to a nursing home, he should probably never left the hospital, went to a nursing home. They're trying to do physical therapy on someone who's basically, paralyzed from the thighs down. And like, you scratch your head. You're like, this is 2024 and we're still dealing with this BS. And it just, forgive me, but it irks me.
It really hurts. And that's, you had mentioned, and I had asked the question during the break, did they try to open up the vessels below the knee? And that's really a point of contention between some old school doctors and even some younger doctors that don't believe that treating the patient below the knee is effective. And my numbers, I presented at a conference recently. It was called Viva, the Vascular Leaders Forum. And our Leg Saver hotline with the Global P.A.D. Association, I presented this information that we've had nearly 1,000 patients that presented to us on deck for amputation. 85% of those patients, in those cases, the doctors never even tried to restore what we call inline flow, right? Especially that flow below the knee and into the foot, particularly important for those diabetics that have a lot of below the knee small vessel disease, right? And 85% included those doctors who only treated to the knee and refused to treat those vessels below the knee, saying it can't be done, it shouldn't be done, it'll only lead to a revolving door of treatment. So, quote, why delay the inevitable? And this is really disconcerting because, a lot of these amputations might be preventable if only the doctors would take the chance to treat below the knee. And patients will tell you that, you know what, I would rather walk to live another day and live to walk another day. And I would rather delay the inevitable if it means that I can run around with my grandkids or my kids for one more day.
Well, and I think what else this illustrates to some degree is our inability as physicians to potentially, like not get ahead of our skis and check the ego at the door. I want there's kind of a cool. This has nothing to do with P.A.D, but if you remember, We Are the World, when 1985, there's a thing on Netflix about how that came together, and so Lionel Richie and Quincy Jones are setting this thing up, and they got all these famous legends coming in to sing this song, and on the door they wrote, check your ego at the door. We as physicians sometimes can't check our egos at the door. So it's like, if, well, I can't do it, then no one else can. And that drives me nuts. And so, you know what, frankly, maybe we just punt on that one and take it to the patients and say, hey, when you have an issue, you ask your doctor, how many of these have they done? What kind of intervention, how much are you going to treat? What's blocked in my leg? And why didn't you open that up? And, I guess flip the coin a little bit, because this it needs to stop. It really does.
It does. And actually, we have Douglas that wants to jump in and comment. And Douglas, do you want to go ahead and unmute and chime in with your comment?
I know I've said this before, but Dr. Phillips, you're right. And Kim talks about this. I'd rather see you twice a year and keep my legs attached to my body, even if it is another 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever, before maybe I have to go to that part. It's like, I wish I had asked my doctor about the axial bifemoral bypass before, and I knew now, so that I would have had those questions available to know and to be able to ask him, how many of these have you done? And what is your success rate in doing them? And if something goes wrong, what are we going to do then?
Well, because I think there's two types of patients. I was dealing with one gentleman, we're talking about a procedure, and he asked a lot of questions. We don't get that very often. And sometimes that takes a physician aback a little bit when, that instead of disarming the physician, it kind of arms them a little bit, and, that they might feel a little uncomfortable. But to me, that just speaks to the fact that the patient really wants to know. I mean, it's frankly their body, so they should know the ins and outs of it. And I've never been a huge proponent of this, but I'm obviously starting to change my philosophy. Patients should ask, how many of these have you done? Like, what are the options? And you don't have to get into the details of how you're going to do it, but like, where's my blockage? What are you going to do? And walk me through this. And always have another opinion, a family member, friend, somebody there who can translate and take notes and whatnot. Because again, this is 2024. And it's just really,
So if I walked
And
in with
especially,
100 questions for you, what are you, and Marcia, I know we're running out of time, but do you have the time to sit with me and answer 30 questions or 40 questions and draw out what you're going to do? Do you really have the time? Is that what we run into also with the doctor's time?
do I have that time? No, but I've often said to patients, hey, this is kind of the recommendation. Here's what we're thinking. And I'll table it to a telehealth before, hey, let's set up a telehealth call. And then we can talk about it further.
and speaking of time and being limited, we're going to get back to this conversation in just a moment. We have more time ahead, but we're out for now. We're heading to break, and we'll see you in a moment. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm live in Las Vegas at OEIS, Outpatient Endovascular and International Society's 11th Annual Scientific Meeting. A lot going on here. There has been a battle brewing over the last few years between hospitals and office-based facilities, both treating peripheral artery disease, those blocked arteries below the knees, and competing for patients, even though there shouldn't be any sort of competition. There are more patients to go around. In our experience with the Global P.A.D. Association and trying to facilitate getting care, is all of the doctors, no matter what facility, office-based lab or hospitals, everyone is just backed out for months for new patients. And patients just aren't getting in a timely fashion in so many different areas, especially in the rural communities. So one such case could be, with your patient, John, that you've been talking about, that, maybe there were times in which he tried to get in to be
Yeah.
seen, maybe was put off for weeks. The process by which this disease progresses, especially when it comes to diabetic patients, it goes fast. If they get to a point where they have a wound, that wound can quickly overnight change, become affected, and that patient can literally within days become septic. And not only their limb is on the line, but their life. And so there aren't enough doctors, there aren't enough facilities to go around, whether it's office based or hospital. And what we're talking about here at this society meeting is everyone just needs to work together to do what's best for the patients, because patients are suffering in the meantime, and we have way too many amputations. And I know that there's a big school of thought, and rightly so, that we need to target those handful of doctors in these office-based labs that are doing too many procedures on intermittent claudicants, meaning the early stage PAD patients, because what they're arguing is that doing those treatments early is leading to early amputation. But what's interesting is the bigger problem that we have is more than 60% of all amputations are occurring without anyone doing anything. So too few procedures being performed, and amputation happening way too often. And more than 90% of those aren't even getting a vascular evaluation at all. And a lot of this could come down to just even the time, the lack of time. We were talking about it with Douglas earlier, the lack of time, lack of doctors. Everyone's just overburdened.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think we have to get to a point where the right patient is seeing the correct patient, seeing the correct doctor for the correct treatment plan. And I don't have an OBL, an office-based lab. These office-based labs play in the sandbox that was created for them by CMS and ultimately then insurance companies. Everybody knows that it's tilted towards certain types of procedures. And some of these procedures pay really, really well, and they're very easy to do based on some of the devices out there, and they're being overutilized for sure. However, so the pendulum swung way far to, let's say, to the left. Well, now they're starting to swing way far to the right, where patients who actually need interventions aren't able to get them in a timely fashion. We're starting to see this now too, with insurance companies asking about we set people up for what we call an angiogram, where we want to take pictures of the arteries and see what they look like. And the insurance companies are asking us, what are you going to do? How many stents are you going to put in? And because they want to capitate this reimbursement. So we have to find a medium and work together as a group, the hospitals, the OBLs, and there's another thing called ASCs, ambulatory surgical centers, where I think these outpatient procedures are ultimately going to land in, where there's just more regulatory monitoring. And that's the problem with the OBLs, in my opinion, from what I know. Not that you can open up a broom closet and then call this and hang a shingle and say this is an OBL, but if you talk to industry people, it's kind of like that in some places, where these ASCs require very specific licensing and overview and quality measures and things. I mean, so for example, not to get off a tangent, but this men's health clinic that we're opening, we just had our lab accredited, and it is an uphill battle. I mean, like you are, and rightfully so, but there are a lot of boxes you need to tick off. And I think that's kind of what we need. And then finally, the last thing that I'll say is, with respect to this patient that I've talked about. Number one, well, no, I've got more to say. So him and his wife, I said, I'm going to put you on our radio show because your voice needs to be heard. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, God, I hope he survives this. But both him and his wife were like, yeah, I'll be on this. And his wife was a little bit perplexed. She is in the medical field, and she said, I don't understand this. Like, how did he walk into this hospital, and now he's gonna get both his legs taken off in like a month's time, like 4 weeks. Like, she said, I don't understand this. And I know what happened, and I tell them as much as I can, but it's just apoplectic, frankly.
No, and I can tell. I mean, it's almost comforting though to hear, for patients that are listening right now, to hear how distraught you are about this situation. And it's something that even, you know, I know that there are bad seeds everywhere. I mean, I would love to say that everyone has the best intention at heart, but you know what? There are people that like to skirt around the rules. And I even had one, ProPublica came to me, the media
Mhm.
outlet
Yeah.
came to me and said, we're trying to make this point that there are too many doctors using these atherectomy devices, those roto-rooting devices that remove the plaque in early stages, and they're just doing it for money. And I could tell her that, yeah, there were a handful that I have seen, but I had never, she asked me to poll our patients, and out of 12,000 patients, we had one that had said they'd been offered a procedure as an intermittent claudican at the time. What's interesting is just last week, I'm really distraught by this one patient that the doctor ended up doing a procedure on a 20% blockage in the leg when the patient only came in and expressed concern about her shortness of breath. And she's a structural heart patient, has had birth defects, things like that. And she was having trouble walking, but, it was more she was concerned about the shortness of breath as being the reason. He went in, did the test, found out she does have peripheral artery disease, but it was only on the right leg at a 20% level, which shouldn't be a problem. And the other leg was nothing. Went in, stented the superficial femoral artery in the right thigh, then said, we're going to come back in a couple weeks and we're going to do the other leg. She called our hotline, and I said, I need to see the documentation of all of this. So get the documentation. John, you're not going to believe this. The
Is
padding of this.
this a great cliffhanger?
Oh,
This is a
it
great
totally
cliffhanger.
is.
Stay with us. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Eight 60 a.m. The Answer.
I want to hear this cliffhanger.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Welcome back to the show. Before we went to break, Kim had me hanging over the edge of a mountain on a cliffhanger, about to tell me a little bit about, I guess, a patient that contacted the Leg Saver Hotline who
Yep.
had a questionable procedure on one leg and maybe was going to have another questionable one on the other.
Yeah. It was just really bad. They had the documentation in there, and it was just bad news. I mean, talking about how this patient had cold feet, and they had claudication when they were walking and all this stuff. And I asked the patient, hey, did you have any of this happening? And she said, absolutely not. I never said anything about that. So it's interesting that it was in the documentation. The patient never said it, ended up with a procedure that she didn't need. I didn't make the determination myself. I was able to get her a second opinion from a conservative doctor. Actually, you and I both know, and he's very well respected. And they said, you know what? Yeah, I'm really disturbed by this whole thing, and I've told the patient to pretty much run. But I have with me right now, so I told you I'm at the OEIS conference, the 11th annual scientific meeting. I have Chad Lorich here, and he is one of my favorite, he's one of my favorite limb savers that we've shared some patients. And so we're talking about, this is Dr. John Phillips. He's out of Ohio
Hey,
Health. And
how you doing?
we're just talking about the OEIS show, and just the issues that we're discussing, the issues with reimbursement, the hospitals with the OBLs. So I'm just wondering, is there anything that's really caught your attention, any discussions that would be interesting just to bring up and raise?
Man, that's a broad question.
Yeah, we're always full of loaded ones.
Yeah, I think it depends on what angle I haven't been a part of the conversation thus far, but what angle, you're looking at the businesses pretty broad. Coming from a patient care focus, you know, I don't think much has changed. I think some of the downward, I see my kind of viewpoint on the downward pressure on reimbursement in the OBL space and the outpatient space. I kind of see that as a good thing because it's kind of gotten some of the riffraff out. You know, just being in some of the conversation where there's maybe some guys that are in it for the wrong reasons or pushing on the wrong fronts, you know, pulling on the wrong levers too much. I think it's tempered that out to where I see a lot of the guys in the field, even this year at the OAS, but even a lot of guys that I talk to around me, guys meeting other physicians that are in the space are the guys that are in it for the right reasons. That are the ones who are the, you know, the ones that are patient first. I say their give a crap factor is, you know, a 10 out of 10 and on the clinical front and their outcomes and what they're doing for their communities. So I think that, you know, I see it as a good thing. I'm not sure if I'd say that on stage in front of the OAS, although I'm about to talk here and give a talk in a few minutes. And I'll probably say something to that similar effect to say, hey, you know, like the industry, I mean, some things are self-regulating. I think it's been good pressures because the only way that you do well is to do good, you know. You put your patient first, you have your good outcomes, you do appropriate care for people and you know, and then the backside happens. But yeah, you still got to be smart. But yeah, that's kind of my,
Yeah,
may have a unique thing. And a guy that's been in the outpatient space, you know, I still think that even though, yeah, my reimbursements have gone down, but we've found a way to do just fine, you know?
yeah, and
Good point that you make, just simply because I was having a conversation at dinner with a couple folks from industry, and they were saying just the same thing, that there have been quite a few office-based labs that have gone out of business, but there are other ones that are popping up in their place. And so that I find that interesting. And we were talking about it just being that, yes, you know, some of the ones that might have been just in it for the money are ended up going out, and you're getting the people that are really looking to do more for the patients. I just talked to a couple of hospital doctors here that are also leaving to actually start their own office-based lab or join another office-based lab because they want to do more for the patients without restrictions. And they're not worried about the money. They just want to help the patients.
yeah, and I would say too that you have again, I'm a hospital employee and I only work in a hospital. There's more than enough patients for everybody. From what I understand, I mean, if you're going to go in the office, if you're going to go into the outpatient space, you probably need to do an ambulatory surgical center as opposed to a straight up OBL. At least that's what people tell me. Having said that, though, I always preach, and when people ask my opinion, and it's not very often, but if you do stuff in the OBL and you work in a hospital too, you should practice the same way in the hospital and the OBL. I know a lot of people that use, you know, expensive balloons and things in the hospital, but when that patient shows up in an OBL, they don't use what I consider the standard of care. And that drives me absolutely nuts. And I know the guys and gals that have the OBLs that do practice what they preach, both in hospital and out, I think do well and are in for the right reasons, as Chad was saying.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. My thoughts on the outpatient space should always be you shouldn't go to a market and open an outpatient space to have an outpatient lab. If you have a local committed physicians that are kind of integrated into the local medical community, and then they offer this as an additional site of service for their patients
Right.
because access and other enhancements, I think that's the way to do it. You know, that's why we've been fortunate to go to, you know, and so yeah, we do a lot of the heavy lifting in the hospitals. We're taking call 24/7. You know, last night I did or I guess it was during the day, and we got in the afternoon before I came up. I did a, you know, pulmonary embolism and sucked a bunch of clot out of a lung. You know, dealt with inpatient. You know, did a bunch, three other consults, and you know, did 4 angios in my outpatient shop. And so we're doing both every day. I think that's the model that I've seen be very sustainable and very much enhance you know, communities and access. So yeah, it's good that, you know, I think
It's like Smokey the Bear. Only you can prevent a forest fire. So only we as interventionalists can change the behaviors of other interventionalists who may, you know, be in it for the wrong reasons. And it behooves us
Yeah.
before the government ultimately may crack down.
Right. The more we self-regulate as a you know, as professions, and I think that includes all three specialties, vascular and IR and cardiology. I think the more we're good citizens. One thing that I've heard multiple times said, even at the OEIS conference, is, hey, be a good citizen. Like you have to have an internal moral professional compass, and if you're putting the patient first and doing your best work, regardless of setting, okay, yeah, that's why, I mean, in our shops, we do obviously use drug coated balloons and we use Sapira stents, and we, the technology that's seen is more expensive. You just have to have options available to you so that you can do the appropriate, therapy. Or, we've done, our walking programs or smoking cessation and all the conservative care that needs to go into in our clinic lifting. I mean, some weeks I spend 2.5 out of my 5 days in clinic seeing patients and doing medical management of things, so that's heavy lifting that a lot of guys don't want to do as well, but it's absolutely critical if you're going to have a successful comprehensive practice where you're going to do good,
Right. And it's, again, pigs eat well and get plump and hogs get slaughtered. So you've got to find a good balance.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to be smart on the financial side, but I mean, we're all,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, come on, man, we're all doing fine. So
Yep, no one's going hungry.
exactly. So do good work, just do good,
Yeah, I think that that's amazing for patients here at Chad Lords. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
I appreciate you. Come on back when you're done with your
I will.
presentation.
Come say hi again.
Yes, definitely.
Take care. See you, Chad.
That was fun. I mean, we're live here at the OEIS conference in Las Vegas, and so
I love meeting new people too. So that's sweet.
it was fantastic. Next time you should come sit at the booth with me. I think, are you going to NCVH in New Orleans coming up? Big conference?
I am thinking about it. Yeah, thinking about it.
Okay. I think we need to broadcast live from there. I think it'd be absolutely fun. And speaking of fun, we're going to continue this really fun conversation in just a moment. Stay with us right here on 860 AM The Answer. Don't go away.
Sure.
This is 860 AM. The Answer.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
It's hard to believe that the show is almost over. We've only got a few minutes left. We were just talking about during the break how we had a certain show theme planned and we had to pivot. I think this is a great show. We've had really candid conversations. I know Kim's having a lot of fun out in Vegas. I don't know. Are you going to do some partying tonight? Maybe spend a little money?
No, it's interesting. When I first came in on Wednesday night, Dr. Craig Walker, who is a top interventional cardiologist out of Louisiana with the Cardiovascular Institute of the South, he nabbed me. I was able to have dinner with him. And also there's a company called Reflow that creates some sort of a stent that has spikes and supposedly
I know it.
might be removable.
It is. Yeah. It's on a balloon. Yeah. Yep. We call it a temporary stent.
I had dinner with him. I had dinner with a Dr. Eric Dipple out of Iowa, which was really fun, exciting. And
I like Eric.
It was he's very forthcoming with his opinions and cares so much about very passionate about the patients. It comes through so much. So we were out till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then Dr. Stephen Lashak, who's out of Memphis and Tennessee and South Haven, ends up, I'm walking down the Paris they have this brick or cobblestone area, and this is 1:30 in the morning, and he's like, "Hey, are you Kim McNicholas?"
Nothing goes
oh
well.
My God, Stephen Lashak.
Nothing good happens after midnight, Kim. We all know that.
So he and I ended up talking till 2:30 in the morning, just about everything, because he's worked with so many of our patients, and I'd never met him in person, which is great about this conference, meeting people in person that I've only dealt with via phone. And we were out there in the lobby area, and this newlywed couple, one of them was the former police chief of Chicago, comes in with his newlywed. They come in with donuts. I mean, coming to vascular people with big things of donuts, each case of donuts costs $80 for 6 donuts. I am not kidding. I was like, are they made of gold? So we ended up taking one. It tasted like a donut, but
yeah. Well, again, it probably tastes better It probably tastes better at 9 a.m. Right?
That's what I was thinking. So, we've had quite a few late nights, great dinners here, but the last 2 nights, no,
What
I
are you
was
gonna
in bed
take?
early.
I think we've got probably 2 minutes left or so. What are you gonna take home? Like two big points, two big take home points for you at this conference. What do you think?
I think the fact that everybody here seems to be on the same page in creating standards that put the patient first, encouraging more evidence on below the knee treatments to create a standard with that, because with the big boom in diabetes, we have more diabetics that are forming peripheral artery disease and have this below the knee disease, and we can't just keep cutting off legs without even trying. And so we need to create the standards in the societies, whether it's the OAIS, Society for Vascular Surgery, interventional cardiology societies,
Yeah.
interventional radiology, but all come together to create standards that are going to improve these outcomes and reduce the number of amputations, especially for diabetics.
Yeah, I think a lot of good content out there. At the end of the day, you do what's right for the patient, and um, you will be rewarded on multiple levels. I think that the conversation that we had about the gentleman who's going to lose both his legs, or maybe has lost them, I'm not sure yet, but is pretty sobering. And it just
Yeah.
speaks to the fact that this mission is not done. This is a race we probably will never complete or win, but we have to keep fighting. We have to fight for funding, and we have to fight to keep this message alive. Because if your candle or flame goes out, Kimberly, there are going to be a lot of patients that are going to suffer. So I'm going to keep fighting with you.
I'm right alongside you. Couldn't have a better partner in crime. With that, we hope you have a really great weekend to everyone. Hopefully, you'll join us again next Saturday.
Stay tuned, everybody. Have a great weekend. And Kim, don't lose too much money. Please do not lose too much money.